It's no secret that both Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are some of the most beloved games right now in the RPG community. While millions have already joined Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, and the rest of the party on this unknown journey, flat out there are millions of people who have never had the chance to play these games because of the platforms they're available on. As of March 2025, the only two platforms you can play either Final Fantasy VII Remake or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on are PlayStation or PC. This has completely alienated both Nintendo and Xbox's user base, leaving hundreds of millions of people unable to play these games if they don't own either a PlayStation or a PC. However, that might be changing soon, especially with recent rumors regarding both of these games coming to new platforms. Welcome back to episode 19 of Under the Plate, and today we're going to dive into why Nintendo Switch 2 could be the biggest thing yet for the Final Fantasy VII Remake project. To kick things off, I want to highlight both the sales of Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. As you may know, Final Fantasy VII Remake launched exclusively on PlayStation 4 on April 10th, 2020 after being delayed from March 3rd. The game also saw an expanded edition in the form of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade launch on both PlayStation 5 and PC. Totaling up both of those releases, Final Fantasy VII Remake has sold over 7 million copies as of September 2023. This is a massive number for Square Enix, as Final Fantasy VII Remake is Square Enix's best-selling game ever on PlayStation Network as of 2024. It's quite honestly crazy to think about that, especially considering that PlayStation Network has existed across PlayStation 3, 4, and 5. And just think about some of the games that Square Enix has released in that time frame. We saw the release of Final Fantasy XV, Nier Automata, and many more huge titles that surely sold a ton on PlayStation Network. But as of January 2024, nothing surpassed Final Fantasy VII Remake. So, we've established that Final Fantasy VII Remake was successful, but how did Final Fantasy VII Rebirth fare? If you just looked on social media, I think it's pretty easy to assume that the game was a huge failure and everything was in code red mode at Square Enix. However, we're going to take a step back from these perceptions and manifested realities on social media and look at the cold hard facts. In December 2024, Yoshinori Kitase actually commented on the sales of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in an interview with IGN Brazil. Translated by Final Weapon staff writer Ryuji Blades, Kitase said the following in that interview. While we are satisfied that we're meeting a certain number of sales, with the current modernization state of games, we cannot be exclusive to a single platform. I think we need to be able to offer the game to as many players as we can. So, this is definitely a vague statement in some areas, but I think it's pretty clear that yes, Square Enix was satisfied with the sales that they got for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. However, of course, there was definitely a wish for more. We've yet to see any public reporting of how the game sold worldwide, and I think that's pretty telling. Square Enix is a company that usually goes straight to social media and promotes just how well its games are selling. We saw this throughout 2024 with numerous games from Square Enix showcasing celebratory artwork for huge sales achievements like 1 million or 2 million copies sold. Obviously, we did not get this for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and we still haven't. I thought there was a pretty decent chance we might see an official sales update alongside the game's first anniversary last month, but that came and went and there was nothing. It almost makes me wonder if we'll ever really see a true Final Fantasy VII Rebirth sales number, or if Square is just going to lump it in as the Final Fantasy VII Remake project sales. That is not to say that the game performs so horribly that they have to hide the numbers or they're so embarrassed of it, because as we saw with that interview with Kitase, the company is satisfied for it meeting a certain number of sales. However, I don't think it takes too much thought to realize that the company probably wanted a little more out of this release. Once again, I think a lot of people on social media just make a lot of uninformed opinions on why Final Fantasy VII Rebirth could have, quote, underperformed. I mean, for crying out loud, I've seen people say the game didn't sell so well because this character did that, or because the ending was confusing, or this or that, and it's like, take a step back and read this message from Kitase I just said. With the current modernization state of games, we cannot be exclusive to a single platform. That is the answer as to why Final Fantasy VII Rebirth didn't sell as well as it could have. And that goes for Final Fantasy VII Remake as well. Yoshinori Kitase is not the only one at Square Enix who believes this, as in May 2024, Square Enix revealed a new business strategy for the future. This is part of Square Enix's new 3-year medium-term business plan called Square Enix Reboots and Awakens. This is said to be a 3-year plan for rebooting for long-term growth. Speaking on how to diversify earnings opportunities by strengthening customer contact points, Square Enix said the following in their presentation during this investors meeting. Shift to a multi-platform strategy. Aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy that includes Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. This would allow the company to build an environment where more customers can enjoy our titles in regards to major franchises and AAA titles, including catalog titles. This new strategy caused a massive amount of projects to be cancelled as the company is now striving for quality over quantity. I think there's seriously a chance that there could be a lack of new Square Enix games in 2025 as a result of this new strategy in prioritizing multi-platform releases. But back to the point, we all know that launching games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth exclusively for one platform is a problem, and Square Enix clearly does too. It seems like going forward, the company is going to attempt to put new games on every platform possible. But what about games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? The answer lies with a rumor that originated earlier this year from prominent leaker Nate the Hate. In case you're unfamiliar, Nate the Hate was probably the most popular name on the internet for a day when the Nintendo Switch 2 got revealed and he correctly leaked the date after numerous people called him out for being false. Nate has had his podcast running since 2019, and truthfully, he's been dropping leaks here and there for all that time. Most of the time, he's been incredibly reliable, and there have been a few slip-ups here and there, but nothing that other leakers weren't leaking as well. So, to his rumor, earlier this year on a podcast episode, Nate revealed that, according to some of his sources, both Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth are coming to not only the Xbox Series X and S, but Nintendo Switch 2. He expanded a bit on a forum sharing that Square Enix is prioritizing Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth for Switch 2. Adding that the company does not have plans to bring Final Fantasy XVI to Switch 2 at this time. So, let's unpack this. Based on Square's new business plan, I think ports to Switch 2 and Xbox make so much sense with this multi-platform strategy. Although both Remake and Rebirth initially started as PlayStation exclusive titles, we eventually saw both come to PC. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade came to PC in December 2021 on Epic Games Store and June 2022 on Steam. This was over a year and a half for the port, but just 6 months for the Intergrade release. As for Rebirth, Square Enix just recently released the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth PC port in January 2025, just 11 months after the release on PS5. Rebirth had a tremendously better PC launch than Remake solely for the fact that Square Enix did not choose to put the game exclusively on Epic Games Store, so it launched on both Steam and EGS at the same time. So, things are getting faster, but why does a Nintendo Switch 2 port matter? I think it all revolves around one idea: getting as many people as possible excited for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. With Square Enix's new strategy, I expect Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 to launch multi-platform day 1. Of course, that includes both PlayStation and PC, which both have the 2 chapters of the Final Fantasy VII Remake project out currently, but I also think that's going to include Xbox and Nintendo Switch 2. There's no denying that both PlayStation and PC are huge markets in the gaming world, and if Square Enix were to launch Part 3 on both of them simultaneously, I believe it could easily become the best-selling game in the remake project. However, even then, you're alienating over 100 million people who have a Nintendo Switch. Just think about it. As of December 31st, 2024, Nintendo Switch has sold 150 million units worldwide. Now sure, millions and millions of people who own a Switch also own a PlayStation or an Xbox or a PC. However, millions of Nintendo Switch owners have it as their only console, and Square Enix can truly tap into this market, especially considering they love RPGs. There are numerous series that have done so well on Nintendo Switch solely for the fact that the user base loves big, meaty RPGs. We've seen it with Xenoblade Chronicles, among many other series. With this lens, it starts to make sense why Square Enix might want to port Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth to Switch 2. Not only can you sell millions of copies for these two incredible games on a new platform, but you can get millions of people excited and ready to purchase the final installment of the remake project. I think as ports alone, these two games are going to sell incredibly well on Nintendo Switch. You've got numerous groups of people who are going to be interested in purchasing these games on Switch. First, you have the players who have yet to play either Final Fantasy VII Remake or Rebirth and only own a Nintendo console. But then you also have Nintendo Switch owners who might have already played the game elsewhere but want to purchase it for portable mode. As someone who doesn't own a Steam Deck, I know I personally would love to play both these games on the go. I think Nintendo fans as a whole are super hungry for big RPGs like the Final Fantasy VII Remake project, but they just haven't had a chance to experience them yet since they didn't release on Nintendo Switch. These ports for Square Enix on Switch 2 could be unbelievably huge for the company, providing millions of copies sold while also getting millions of people excited for the conclusion. I know there's many of doubters out there thinking these games are going to run horribly on Switch 2, but for now, I'm just going to kick my feet up on the desk and relax. The Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have onboard DLSS AI upscaling support, and even if the T239 ends up being a 8nm chip, everything's going to be fine, so let's stop the worrying now. To wrap things up, I think it's pretty clear to see how Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth could be huge releases for Square Enix on Nintendo Switch 2. It's a surefire way to get millions of people excited for the continuation of the remake project while also boosting the sales by the number of millions. Hopefully, we won't have to wait too long before we get confirmation of these games coming to Switch 2. I personally wouldn't even be surprised if the ports show up at the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct in April, but we'll just have to see on that one. And that's gonna do it for episode 19 of Under the Plate. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on a Rebirth or Remake Switch 2 port. Would you buy it? Would you not? Or are you just interested to see what it looks like? I'm looking forward to reading and responding to those comments in the weeks to come. But thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.